Jubilee literally means the blowing of a ram's horn to announce the beginning of the celebration. So I think maybe next year we should start with that. We'll have someone stand at the back and use the ram's horn to make this the truly biblical Jubilee that we are celebrating. Now, it was a dramatic kind of entrance, meant to be the trumpet of God that was highlighting a particular part of the relationship of God with his people. What this meant in practice was that in this time of Jubilee that they would mark in these 50-year interims, that they would celebrate liberty, a liberation. And they would do it not just in a kind of name only, but they would set slaves and prisoners free. They would cancel debts. And they would, in the most practical terms, remind everybody of what was the deepest truth of their identity, that they were a people who belonged to God, that they had been brought into a kind of relationship with God, whereas God was the creator of everything, and he entrusted his creation to their care. So it was a reminder that nothing that they thought they possessed was actually their own possession, but rather belonging to God. It was a law that God gave to his people. It was a law that was given because he knew human hearts. It's extraordinary to think about, really, that this relationship with God, this entrusting of everything to us, was something God continued even after sin. After the fall of humanity, God still said, I will entrust this to you, but because I know the weakness of human hearts, I will give you laws to guide and protect you. God knows that part of the fallen reality of our hearts is that when we possess something, there is a tendency to be possessed by it, to let whatever it is that we are holding on to control us in some way. And so while things are entrusted to us, we have to be careful that they don't take over in our lives. So we have this rule, this law that is the Jubilee, the letting go of that tendency that we have to possess, to hold too closely. Because when we actually let go, it's then that we experience the liberty that we were made for. It's then that we can see past whatever is entrusted to us to the giver of every gift. This is at the heart of what this celebration was about in the Scriptures, a reminder of this fact, and in the most practical of ways. Now, Jubilee, the word, has come to mean a number of different things. The church celebrates Jubilee years, and so we highlight different aspects of our faith with a closer attention over the course of years. And certainly, it marks celebrations of key numbers of years as we mark anniversaries, religious profession, wedding anniversaries. And so this idea of Jubilee has evolved some to reflect more the idea of a celebration. But because we are celebrating a Jubilee for our religious sisters, I want to connect it to that original idea of liberty, of what Jubilee was given by God to actually bring about in our lives. Because one of the great witnesses of sisters is the letting go of things. It is the commitment to a whole different set of values to make their lives revolve around God in a concrete way, of not being claimed by anything that even runs the risk of leading away from God. It's the witness of the lives of sisters, and to celebrate Jubilees is to highlight that faithful dedication over the course of many years. And so for many years, these women, and in particular the ones that we honor tonight, They have lived in a particular kind of relationship with God. And so they remind all of us what it should mean to really belong to God. To live with a focus on God. To be reminded that the things that are entrusted to us, in fact, come from God. And so we celebrate their witness. And we celebrate it by reminding each one of us in our own lives to look past the things we possess to the giver of everything that we have. Now, in today's gospel, we are reminded of the difficulty of this path. We know that God, who gave us life and entrusts his creation to us, he calls us back to himself. We know that this life is a journey. But we are reminded today that the gate is narrow. They question Jesus, saying, well, will there be many who are saved? And he doesn't give them a number, but he highlights for them the challenge of living their lives well. The gate is narrow. Now, one way for us to think about this, to even picture concretely the kind of narrow gate. Imagine trying to walk through a narrow door carrying too much stuff. We can't get through that narrow gate until we lay down some of those things and pass through the door with the one thing that God wants, our very lives, not all the stuff that we might want to carry with us. And yet, even though we know that we can't pass through that gate with all this stuff, we have a tendency to cling anyway. To hold on to try and rearrange ourselves so that we can go through with the things that we treasure. And so a Jubilee is a reminder that liberty, that the real freedom that God has made us for, comes with our willingness to let go and simply present to God who we are without all the extras. In the Bible, Jubilee was a law to let captives free. But if the people in the time of Israel did only the superficial letting go, and instead of letting their hearts be free, then the Jubilee would be a superficial kind of celebration. Their hearts could still be trapped, even if they followed all of the rules. Now, we honor the sisters today for their dedicated service. But the greatest honor that we can give to these, our sisters, is to learn from that example. They didn't only make that commitment for their own sake. They committed their lives to the way of God for our sakes, in part for the service that they have provided to the many people who have benefited from their actions over the years, but even by the very witness of their lives, even by the very giving testimony to what matters most in the world. So we honor them the best when we heed that example, when we say thank you, but when we also are willing to live in the freedom that comes from a life dedicated to God. Their lives are meant to point us to God. And when we go, then they know the greatest joy and success of their witness. In concrete form, that means that each one of us should take a close look at our relationship with God. We who are privileged to be at Mass tonight to celebrate with them, this is an opportunity for us to look in the mirror a little bit, to ask, what do I cling to that holds me back? What do I cling to that won't pass through the narrow gate? What is it that threatens to block my entrance? To celebrate a Jubilee is to be reminded of things that maybe have become too great a priority, to be reminded of the one priority that matters, that relationship with God. And so this Jubilee is a time of grace for each one of us who celebrate with them. Because God very much wants to give you the grace of salvation. When Jesus described the narrow way, he did not want to exclude anyone, but he wanted to challenge everyone so that all could pass through by the way that God had provided, the liberty that he came to bring. At this Mass, we get a taste of that salvation now. The Lord providing the sustenance that we need so that we can make the journey and pass through the narrow gate. God desires our hearts. And so we let go of superficial actions. And so my prayer is that with the witness of our sisters, God may liberate each one of us, that together with them we may all live in Jubilee.